Hi guys, it's Machaela and welcome back to my channel and welcome to, I'm going to say this is a pretty vulnerable video for me. It's different from a lot of my makeup content. I am wanting to do more lifestyle content here on this platform, but this is something that it hits me in a way that's a little bit different because this is a video about how my marriage was saved from nearly being torn to shreds. And more importantly, it's a video about how God saved my marriage and how my marriage went from completely just shattered to we are full on thriving right now. And if it weren't for bad things happening, we wouldn't be where we're at today. My goal of this video is to not get into the details of what happened because there are still some things that are being worked through, but rather focusing on how we are where we are through Christ alone and through the various aspects of how Christ brought that healing to us. So if that is something that you are interested in knowing more about coming from my perspective, please let's just keep watching, and I hope that this can help some of you out there, whether you're newly married or you're going through a rough patch in your marriage. But let me tell you right now, there is absolutely nothing that God cannot fix in your marriage. Believe me, the enemy has tried to tear my marriage apart through many different avenues, and if we can survive, you can too, again, through Christ alone. In my hands here, I've got some notes. None in a particular order. I do have somewhat of an order, but nothing that's like super strict to this order. But really it's about how, and I think one of the first things as to how our marriage was saved is through accountability. Accountability with each other for each other's wrongdoings. Accountability to friends and family members. In my case, it was my parents, it was our church family, it was friends who were close to us, friends who knew us when our marriage was good before, who stuck with us in the tragedy and the hard times that our marriage was meant to tear apart, and friends and church family who are still with us today. People who are now in our lives after our marriage has been in the process of being rebuilt, and being accountable to them as well, and allowing that just accountability, not hiding what goes on inside of our home. I mean, there are things that are private, of course, but being very open to all those accountability partners as to what happens within the home, so that they can say, hey, you could fix this here, or you need some help here, or hey, you're actually doing really good in this area, keep it up. But having those accountability, we've seen a marriage counselor. We are still seeing a marriage counselor, marriage and family counselor, and let me tell you, she is amazing. I will say this with counseling though, you need to find the right counselor that is the right fit for your family and who knows the situation of which you are in order to properly help you. If you do not find the right fit, I don't believe it could be as effective as it could be if you were to find somebody who is the right fit, and God provided an amazing counselor for us. And we've got allowing God to work in our lives. We both need to be praying, and we both need to be open to whoever or whatever we need to do to make our marriage work, and allowing those resources to be used by God, and allowing Him to bring those resources to us to make it work. And of course, only God can truly fix a broken marriage. Only Him. We are only here because of Him. So before I go anywhere else in this video, only God can fix the marriage. After that comes everything else, and after that comes our willingness and our ability to trust Him, and us allowing God to allow us to do whatever it takes to fix the marriage, and for our part to allow God to work in any way that He sees fit. And it requires putting in a whole lot of work, and the more broken the marriage, the more work it's going to take. Heck, if you're in the honeymoon phase right now, you're going to need to work on your marriage. You need to work on it now so that you can prevent it from going downhill and going through tough patches. The strongest of marriages have to do with God, with having to forgive each other, and for doing whatever it takes to make the marriage work. And if there's nothing else you get out of this video, those three things right there, again, giving it to God, forgiving one another, and doing whatever it takes to make your marriage work, and allowing God to use those things. Those things are the key things, I believe, and I'm speaking from my own experience. This entire video is about my own experience in my marriage and from my perspective as a wife. Those three things are key to what helped my husband and I save our marriage. And that leads me into this book here. It is called Love and Respect by, I don't even know how to say his name, Emerson, Eggerichs. Anyway, this book right here, going through it, the key phrase is love and respect. My husband needs to love me unconditionally and without me respecting him. Me respecting my husband, I need to honor and respect my husband as the head of our household, even if he's not loving me. And if the two of you can do those things, you can have a great marriage. And the marriage relationship, it's about me and God, not me, my husband, and God. It's me and God. It's my husband and God, not my husband, me and God. Because if I focus on my relationship with God and I trust God to work on my relationship with my husband, then the marriage will work. And I have seen that come true. I've seen that through in my marriage. And are we great at it? No. Where are you kidding me? I feel like I fail daily. But when I am faithful and when I am obeying and when I am focused on my relationship with Christ rather than what my husband's doing wrong or what I feel, keyword, whatever I feel like my husband is doing wrong, my marriage has real good days and my marriage works. Because in that, what I'm not seeing is God is also working on my husband in ways that I don't know about and in ways that I cannot see. This book right here changes things. I highly recommend it. I will leave it linked down below. But I highly recommend it. Again, I recommend it if your marriage is thriving, and I recommend it if your marriage is failing. I recommend it if you are single and you're looking at what the future could hold in marriage. This will set you up for success if you're actively doing this, no matter what season you are in life. And it comes with this workbook. My husband and I, we did this with a marriage class a couple years ago. We are now doing it for the second time just with the two of us, and it's a good reminder to help each other kind of set our marriage back up. And between the counseling, between doing the work and forgiveness, it all works. Another thing, pray and forgive. There was a lot of hurt that led up to the brokenness of our marriage. Again, details are not important in this video. I'm more focused on the how instead of the what. But we had to, and we still do, really need to seek Christ through prayer, through Bible studies, show us the way, through individual Bible studies, through studies that in our conversation, having constant conversation about what we're learning with each other and how we can apply that to our marriage and through our lives in general, both with what he's got going on in the day and what I've got going on in the day. And then forgiving each other. That was a hard one. There was a lot of hurt. But forgiving each other, which has not been easy, but in order to build our marriage back up, it was vital that we do that with each other. We had to do that to go forward. The Bible, God calls us to forgive one another just as he forgave us. And that means forgiving each other again and again and again for little mistakes, for massive mistakes, for whatever mistakes there are. It's constantly and it's continually. We have to do that for both our past and our present mistakes. And when we get to our future mistakes, to forgive each other when the time comes. And just forgiveness, you have to forgive, because if you don't forgive each other, you're going to end up with hurt and pain and resentment. And it's not going to work. It has not been easy. It has been a journey, a whirlwind of a journey. And there are days that past things come up and we're like, what the heck? And it's vital. It is so vital. Counseling, again, one of our accountability partners is our counselor. And honestly, this is one of the first things that, at least for me, I believe that God has led us to when we started our healing journey. When our marriage was broken and in the rocks and on the verge of just divorce and disaster. I mean, it was a disaster. The enemy does not like marriage. The enemy wants to tear marriage apart. But when you don't, I have seen the blessings of what comes through when you don't allow the enemy to win that. And having a counselor to help you work through that and navigate that, I believe that God did place the perfect counselor for us. And again, you have to find one that works for you. But the perfect counselor at the perfect time in our lives, she has guided us through the steps of what we need and the steps of healing, and has kind of helped us navigate the mess, and has helped us navigate where the communication lacks and what we're trying to say to each other when we're both blinded by our own feelings that we can't really figure it out. I highly recommend marriage counseling because again, I feel like it's one of those things where she's an accountability partner. It's vital to the marriage. It's vital to our sanity. I mean, helping us navigate this. And even going on from there, it's, another huge thing is you cannot let past mistakes affect future joy. I am terrible at this. I am so, one little thing comes up and I'm putting up my walls. I'm like, no, back off. Quit acting like you used to act. That wasn't fair to me. That wasn't right. And for me as an individual, and I'm speaking from my perspective. I'm not bringing any of my husband's perspective into this. But for me as an individual, this for me is very hard because I was hurt badly, and not just by my husband's mistakes, but by many different things. But in our marriage, it was hurt. And I mean, my husband, I'll let him, if he feels like it, I'll let him comment his perspective as he sees fit. Or if you guys do want something where you can kind of see his side of things, let him know. I'm sure I can talk him into coming on here. But this for me is hard because, it's like, yeah, there were things that I did that I hurt my husband too. And there were things that he did that hurt me. And not allowing the past mistakes to affect my future joy, because I hold on to things that hurt. And when something comes up and all of a sudden I'm like getting on him for this, that, and the other. And he's like, babe, like this has nothing to do with right now. I need to be the one to say, you know what? I've already forgiven you. I may need to forgive you again because I'm feeling this hurt. And again, talking through it. Allowing myself to talk through it with him. And something that's big is when I'm feeling hurt by something that happened in the past, instead of burying that, my husband has to come up to me and say, babe, let's talk about this, because if you're holding on to this, that's something that you haven't worked through yet, and we need to go through it together. And he's gotten very good about that. And then same vice versa, when one of us is hung up on something from past hurt, or talking through it, it helps. It changes the day. It changes the routine of the day. It changes the air in the day. It really does. And to allow that freedom to talk about it, and for me, when I'm able to talk through it, I'm able to let it go a little bit easier. But to not let that resentment hurt me so much that my walls are up, and that's not healthy. And again, that's something that I need to work on. So if you want to pray for anything about that, by all means. I mean, that for me is hard, and that for a lot of us, I'm sure, is hard. But I know we can do it, and I know that it has gotten easier over time. But please, just don't let it affect you, because if you don't work through it now, and that does kind of go into the work through the hurt. Don't bury it. Go to your counselor, go to your pastor, go to your friends and your family and your accountability partners, go to each other for it. Go to those who can help you through it, because if you can talk through it, it's better to work through it than have resentment. And that is one of those things where my husband and I started to rebuild our marriage. We both decided that we were going to work through it. We were going to make it work, and we were not going to let any resentments stay there at the end of it. Again, the journey, it's still a going journey, and it'll be a lifelong journey. We're never going to end this journey of trying to figure out our marriage. But I can say that being on the other side of the hurt, because we have chosen to walk through the pain instead of burying the pain, it's helped a lot. It's made a world of difference. But yes, and again, I'm going into another kind of point here. Learn from the past, but don't forget it. And that doesn't mean, again, kind of contrary to the last point I had, don't let past mistakes affect future joy. However, don't forget what you went through. Don't forget the mistakes that were made. Don't forget how it made you feel, because I don't want to forget the woman that I've become because of the hurt. I have grown a lot. I am strong now. I am, through Christ, through his strength in me, I am a lot stronger of a woman now. I'm stronger in my faith. I'm stronger in some of my temperaments. Maybe I'm a little bit too hard-headed at times, but I'm stronger. My marriage is stronger. Our family is stronger. And I don't want to forget the past, because I don't want to forget how we grew and how much stronger we are because of that. And to remember where God has brought us from. And that kind of reminds me, when you look at like the altars in the times of the Israelites, they built altars through various points in their lives to remember where God has brought them from, to remember what God did, not to hold on to the hurt of the past, but to remember the where God has brought us from. And for us, I don't want to forget the past. I mean, I have pictures on my phone from those times, and I don't necessarily like to look at them, but because they're there, I can reference them to know where God has brought us from. And I look at pictures from that time and now, and I see the change. I see the pictures. And again, just like the Israelites, they remembered what God did for them. We, I feel like, should remember what God did for us in those times, not holding on to the hurt, but remembering how far we are now because of God, because of Christ alone. And to remember that, you know what? Something else is going to come up down the road that's going to hurt, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be hard. But if we can remember the time that we had gone through over the last couple of years and say, you know what, we did that. Who says we can't do this? You know, kind of like, you know, so what, Satan? But to, you know, like if the enemy couldn't tear us down over here, you know, this was a very weak and very vulnerable time. Who says we can't get through the next boulder or hill or mountain our way? God says a little bit of faith can move mountains. Let's let him move the mountains. And to remember that God moved this mountain where we should have had nothing. God restored everything and gave us more. And I don't want to forget that. I don't want to forget what God did for us. I don't want to forget the blessings that, I don't want to forget that where the enemy tried to tear us apart, God used to make us stronger and to make our lives better. And in fact, if it weren't for the things that had hurt, our marriage might not be saved. And so let's I want to look at moving forward. And as we continue on this journey, I believe that it is important to keep a hold of the tools that God has given us to continue to work hard and reflect on what God has done for us. Again, reflecting on that, not forgetting the past, but allowing that past to be a monument of what he had brought us through. And to remember to bring it back to him and keep fighting the good fight. We need to stay on our word and work on our individual walk with him. And at some point, you know, my husband and I have talked about it, and I don't think neither one of us really feel like we're quite there yet, but I believe it would be appropriate, and I don't say this lightly, but appropriate to renew our vows as a symbol of the renewing of our relationship through Christ alone, you know, to remember where things were broken and to have that. And I don't necessarily believe in renewing vows, but when it comes to things that the enemy used that should have tore you apart, I believe that it would be appropriate in those certain circumstances. And another thing to remember is we each have our individual walk with Christ. We, in order for our marriage to work, our relationship with Christ needs to work. We need to have our separate and intimate time with God. And for me, that's in the mornings. My husband, he has different times a day, but to have them separately, but to also be able to come together and, you know, do our marriage books and discuss our walks and communicate and discuss where we need help with holding each other accountable individually in our own walks with Christ and in our own walks throughout the day, because we're doing separate stuff during the day. But to have those individual walks and to come together in that. And then also communicating. Honestly, a lot of our day-to-day issues have to do with the lack of communication. Like, you know, I thought, okay, let's just take Saturday. Okay, he has his idea of how he wants Saturday to go. I have an idea of how I want Saturday to go. We keep going around our ideas, and then we butt heads throughout the whole day. Whereas if we take a step back and say, like, Friday, we both share our ideas, and then our Saturdays can come, and we're both on the same path as to what to do. If we can knock out some of those little communication issues, we can knock out a lot of little fights during the day. And I mean, if you're married, I'm sure you know, if you're in a relationship of any sort, I'm sure you know, just communicating so you both understand how, you know, just the walk. And whether you're working through a small problem or you're sharing, or you're going through like a big mistake, I believe that, you know, whether you're working through a small problem or whether it's something that's really kind of a difficult situation, just fixing some of the communication mistakes, I believe, will really help. And again, I highly recommend that you get the Love and Respect book, both the hardcover and the workbook. They go together. But do that, because that does, going through this and going through a Bible study together, going through this marriage study together has really helped us in our communication skills with one another, and has allowed us to see each other from the perspective of one another. And again, utilizing counseling, utilizing family and friends and our accountability partners to help with that. And again, yeah, we will bring up with issues that we just cannot find common ground on. We will bring up a third party, such as a counselor, pastor, accountability partners, to help us navigate that. And just making sure that we're able to just, again, fix the communication issues. That'll fix a lot of useless problems. And I do want to point out that usually a small communication issue, something small, is usually the result of something big. So if you're nitpicking at each other for little small things, it's usually because there's a deeper issue, and that's where I would definitely say go to your third party, go to your counselor, your pastor. Probably I would suggest more on a professional front on that one, but you can even go to any number of your accountability partners to help work through the issue. But if it is something that you just can't find a common ground on, or if it is a deeper issue, I would maybe look more for professional help, or at least somebody who is older and wiser in their marriage, who has been through a few things. Make sure they're still married and that they are walking in the way that they should be walking. But again, Christ alone. I mean, prayer and allowing God to bring those people into your lives. And if you don't have anyone and that could help you with that, I would start looking in the church, because I feel like church is, again, I feel like looking for somebody in the church would really, if you don't have anyone, it would really, church is a good place to start, because from there, it opens the doors to people who are loving, who are caring, who know God's word, who value the family, who value the marriage, and I feel like it's a good place to start. And then from there, just, again, pray about which church to go to, but if you just start somewhere, I do believe that God will lead you to where you need to be in that aspect. And just to conclude, marriage is hard. The enemy wants nothing more than to tear us apart, but God is bigger. And when we honor our vows and give it all to Him, no matter what, there is nothing that can tear our marriage apart. Marriage is like a triangle. If I'm over here, my husband is over here, and God is up top, the closer we grow to God, the closer we grow together. And that's what we want. We want to grow closer to God, and in that we are closer to one another because we are both choosing God first. And even if one of you is growing closer to God, the other one is down here, guess what? You're still a whole lot more closer to your husband than you were when you were down here, because you're closer to God. And again, God does honor that commitment. Focus on you in your relationship and let God focus on your spouse, and it'll come together. But the enemy, he had every intention of tearing us apart. But what he intended for evil, God used for good. The very thing that was meant to destroy us, God used to save us. And in the moments, it looks bleak and it's not fun. But looking back on it, it is the best thing that has ever happened to us. And the Bible, Genesis 50:20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Again, from Genesis 50:20. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know if you want more talks like this. I'd be happy to do them. Marriage, it is something that is hard. It is something that the enemy does not like. And it is something that we were able to get through. And I'm proud that through Christ alone, and through the work, and through forgiveness and allowing God to just work. I mean, it wasn't just a single person's decision. It was both my decision and my husband's decision to fix our marriage. And because of that, I feel like God didn't honor that, and God allowed things that we didn't think were possible when we were in the thick of this, that we didn't think would happen. We didn't think we'd be here in the position that we are now. But God brought us through, and I am so proud of that. I'm so thankful. I am so thankful, because 2 years ago we were done for. We were hurting. We didn't know left from right hardly. We thought that our marriage was gone, but then God said, no, it's not. I see it's not done. You just have to allow me to work. Anyway, again, thank you for watching this video. I hope this helped. Feel free to message me on my Instagram if you have any questions. You have some personal talks. I'd be willing to have a conversation with you. Again, feel free. My Instagram handle will be linked down below, and I'm more than willing to privately talk with any of you. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.